What's up, guys? Dr. Seth back here to help solve your powerlifter problems. So let's talk about what you should do or how you should train when you don't have a meet immediately coming up on the horizon, when you aren't in a meet prep, when you're not 8 weeks out, 12 weeks out, 16 weeks out. What do you do from like 24 weeks to 16 weeks? What do you do from 30 weeks out to 16 weeks? What do you do to fill that space of the calendar so that you can have a better meet prep? And in the past, I have said that I don't like the idea of an off season. And that isn't so much that I do not think training should change from when you don't have a meet coming up to when you do, but it's more so because I don't like the idea of an off season because so many lifters change their training so drastically that their off season doesn't contribute to a better in season. What I want lifters to think about is, how can I set my off season up, or how can I set my time away from a meet up in order to allow me to have the best meet prep possible? And the number one thing that we need to do with an off season is that we need to make sure that we are in shape to peak or to start a prep when it is time to start our peak or when it is time to start our prep. So if you're starting an off season at 30 weeks, you know that by the time you get to 12 weeks out, you need to be in shape to do 12-week out things. You know that if you're 30 weeks out, you need to set yourself up so that by the time you're 6 weeks out, you're in shape to really climb that peak. And if we aren't doing enough work through the off season, if we aren't training hard enough, if we aren't training with the intent to actually get us to that point, we're going to be playing catch up. And so many lifters don't take training seriously until they're in meet prep, and then they just end up hitting the same total over and over again because they do a 12-week prep. They take, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months off from real hard training. They do a 12-week prep, get the exact same total. They do the same thing. They take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months off from training. They do a 12-week prep, and then they get the same total, and they wonder why they aren't progressing. And that is because they aren't setting themselves up to be able to climb from their original start point because they didn't do any work between the last meet and when they're starting their next prep. So the big thing we need to do with that off season, with the time away from the meet, is we need to work on things that will improve our barbell lifts. And where lifters go wrong with that statement is they think that, oh, I have weak quads, my quads are holding back my squat, I'm going to do a ton of hack squats. But if they forget about doing barbell squats, or they forget about doing front squats, or they forget about doing high bar squats, they're probably not going to translate to their comp squat in time if they run their off season like a bodybuilder, doing machine work, doing extensions, doing hacks, doing leg presses. All that stuff might train their quads well, but if they aren't doing squatting on top of that, or if they've gone too far away from the squat, it's not going to translate and they're not going to get anything out of it. And again, they're going to be climbing their way back from about nothing in order to get to the meet, and they're going to be shooting themselves in the foot. I've seen this all the time with my rehab consults. Is somebody does their off season like a bodybuilder, they do a ton of machine work, they don't do a ton of barbell work, they do a ton of dumbbell work, and then when they start to try to ramp up with the barbell and prep, they're not ready for the barbell, so they end up at best sucking, at worst getting hurt as they make that climb. So when we're setting up an off season, that I don't like to see people move away or too far away from the power lifts. I like barbell movements in there. I like squats, I like benches, I like deadlifts, although I do like lower specificity in terms of competition lookalike, but higher specificity in terms of what the lifter needs. So if we go back to that quad example, if someone needs more quads in their squat, I'm going to want to see them running high bars with the intent of pushing the knees forward. I'm going to want to see them running front squats. I'm going to want to see them, if they squat in flats, maybe doing heel elevation to allow more forward knee travel. I'm going to want to see them squatting with the intent of putting more quads into the lift. Similar deal with bench. If it's weak triceps, I don't want to see them spending all their time doing tricep pushdowns. I want to see them running JMs hard. I want to see them running close grips hard. I want to see them maybe running close grip two-board hard. I want them doing work with the barbell that will translate back to the comp lift. And on that same time, if we are going away from the comp lifts on our main movements, if the stuff we're pushing the hardest isn't the comp variation, I still like to have some of the comp variation sprinkled in. So like say if our main squat is a high bar pushed hard, I might have that same lifter do the low bar comp squat as a secondary or as a speed work on another day of the week, just so they don't lose that groove, they don't lose familiarity with that. Because if they aren't familiar at all with the comp squat, with the comp groove, by the time meet prep rolls around, they will be playing catch up, and we don't want to do that. Now, that's not to say that your training immediately after the meet needs to be hard, needs to be heavy, needs to be dedicated to weakness. I competed, 8 weeks ago now, I don't remember, 6 weeks, 10 weeks. I competed some time ago. It was towards the end of March, so do the math. I don't know, I don't want to. I don't have a calendar out. I suck with dates. But I competed somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks ago, and my training was really fucking lazy for the last about 4 weeks after that meet, and I've started to ramp up again to get myself back into shape. Because immediately after that meet, I didn't want to train. I had competed 5 times in the 13 months prior to that. I came back from a major injury in the middle of that, and I had the biggest meet of my life. I was pretty burnt out. Not so much physically, but just mentally. I didn't really want to train hard. I didn't want to push hard, so I gave myself a break, and I allowed myself to not push the intensity in training, to not push the volume, to not push things too hard, because I had a very long time between meets, and I knew that I could afford to get out of shape so that I could then get more stimulus out of less going into the next meet. So it's like immediately after the meet, having a washout period for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, like Dave Tate sometimes talks about, can be very helpful for a lifter if they have enough time to get back into shape to build efficiencies before their prep starts. So with myself, I knew that I had time. I knew that I didn't really feel like pushing hard, and I knew that a good refresher would be good for me, both on the mental side and from getting more out of less, because if I get a little bit out of shape, less stimulus will do more. So that is what I chose to do. Now, making that choice, I knew that before I hit my true kind of building phase, I would need to get back in shape, and that's what the last couple weeks have looked like. And now I'm about 15 weeks out from shell shock, and I'm kind of in the meat of what I would call my improvement season. I'm running a lots of 5s on deadlifts and squats. I'm running 8s, 10s, 12s on my benching movements. And that is because, for myself, I haven't done a lot of work in those ranges for a number of years, and I feel as though I could get more benefit out of those ranges right now rather than going back to singles like I normally would, or like I did for the last couple of years in my off season. Now, for me, a couple of years ago, less specific singles was what I needed, because after I had lost weight going down to 242, I was weak as shit and needed to build back that coordination display strength under a barbell. Now that I'm a little bit heavier again, that isn't my problem, and I need to make sure that I have the tissue resilience to display strength, so that is why I'm going into the higher rep ranges. All that aside, a washout period can be beneficial as long as you have enough time to actually have a building period to get you in shape and get you ready for your next meet. So I know I contradicted myself a little bit in this video, saying that your off season needs to be hard enough to get you there, but I took time off. And it's kind of like finding that balance between pushing hard when you need to push hard, and then taking time off when you need to take time off, and pulling back when you need to pull back. With a peak comes a valley. That's the nature of it. If we're going to be climbing a hill, we should expect to have a little bit of drop down afterwards. Now, depending on how big of hill you climb, that drop down might have to be bigger to make up for it. If you don't peak super hard, you might need not to drop super hard. But for this last meet, I really drove it in hard. I had an aggressive peak. I had a huge super compensation on the platform, and that kind of led me to needing to take some time down in order to freshen up, so I actually wanted to train. So guys, what do you do after a meet? Take enough time off that you actually want to train. Do enough good work once you've taken that time off to get you in shape and get you ahead of the curve by the time you need to start your next prep. So don't think of it as an off season. Think of it as your time to do what's necessary in order to improve. That might mean pulling back. That might mean pushing ahead. So guys, hopefully you got something out of this video. Thank you for watching. I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you for everyone who has been subscribed, and that number is climbing on a daily basis. And seeing that makes me more excited to put more stuff out. So drop a comment, hit that like button, share it with your friends. Tell them that this channel doesn't totally suck, and hit up that Activated Performance app. I'm building it out day by day, trying to get more and more on there every single day. It is taking some time, but I'm really excited to bring that to you guys to make things more accessible for more people so they can see my rehab philosophy, so that they can see my training philosophy and make themselves better. Thank you so much again. Peace out.